All right, welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a quick peek at today's top stories. We got Venom staying on top. First Man comes in third place, and we got to watch out this weekend because Michael Myers is back, and this time he's gonna kill again. Cause that's what he does always. All right, wow, I'm so good at this. It's just so natural. All right. Without further ado, let's go into what happened this past weekend at the box office. Second week of October, coming off the highest grossing October weekend ever. This one didn't quite match up to that, but still did decently well. We're actually seeing some long-range projections right now that are projecting this year to be the highest grossing box office ever. But we got a while to go until we see how that plays out. But starting off this week, Venom stayed atop. It was a little closer between A Star is Born and Venom this week, but Venom is going to hang on to that number one spot, coming in at just over $35 million in week two, dropping 56%. Which isn't too bad. I mean, considering it made $80 million last week. Generally the bigger, obviously the bigger amount of money that you make. Wow, that's terrible grammar, but whatever. The more money you make, opening weekend, the bigger the drop's going to be, kind of no matter what. But there were a lot of projections expecting this to maybe drop in the low to mid 60s going into week two. But it looks like it's it's riding the high audience scores instead of the low critic scores. I think this one's down to like a 20 something on Rotten Tomatoes right now. I'm not sure. Let me double check. But while I'm doing that, I mean, we'll talk about worldwide. It also stayed atop the box office, bringing in an additional 69.7 in the international markets. It's now open in 54 markets. And highest this week, it debuted to 25.4 million in South Korea. And Venom is still, it's at a 31% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Still got that 88% audience score though. So again, it seems like it's going more along the audience ratings right now, and the critic scores possibly aren't hurting it as much. And I think that makes sense for a superhero movie. It is probably not one that fans looking forward to would pay attention to the critics necessarily as much on as if it were a drama or a period piece or something. That's a genre that I would find much more heavily affected by critical reviews than something like Venom would be. Still kind of expected to get a little more of a drop. And with that drop, it's trending kind of alongside where Logan was. Logan opened up at 88 million, so definitely a little on the higher end. And then it grossed 38 million in its second weekend, and it went on to gross 22.6. Of course, Logan had far better critical reviews than Venom does, and it got a more positive audience response as well, even considering the generally positive audience response Venom has gotten. So I don't know that Venom, which obviously is already not grossing as much as Logan, I don't think it'll hold out quite as long as Logan did. I would expect it still probably though to gross around 200, 215 probably. It's at 142 total domestic gross right now, and then worldwide it's been doing very, very well. Moving on to number 2, Star is Born, still going strong, dropped just 33%. So a great hold for Star is Born. Of course, it didn't open up as huge as Venom did, but still a very, very strong hold going into week 2 for A Star is Born. That brings its total gross up to 94 $8.6 million. Of course, it did have some limited release before its official release last week. So it has a little bit more than just the combination of this and last week. Internationally, it added another $20.2 million, bringing its international total gross to $41 million. And next week it's going to open up in one of the big markets, going to open up in Australia next week. So we'll have to see how that impacts its international gross, and should look to hold pretty well here next week. I would expect it to once again be in the top 5 next week. Moving on to number 3, one I'm not sure if we'll see in the top 5 next week is going to be First Man. In its opening weekend, opens to $16 million in 3,600 theaters. That's apparently about where Universal had it projected, but that's definitely a little under where a lot of us plebeians were projecting it to be. I talked about last week, we were projecting it around 20 or so million. I think despite the fact that it's gotten very positive critical reviews, and relatively positive fan audience reviews as well, it's just these long character pieces, dramas just don't tend to do very well at box office, and Gosling isn't really a box office name anymore because he just doesn't do a whole lot, and a lot of his more recent work has been very serious, which hasn't gotten his name out there quite as much as back in the Notebook days when he was like hot stuff. And Damien Chazelle again is a big name among a certain crowd. I just don't know that crowd is it's crosses over too much with the crowd that is propelling Venom to its 2 number 1 weekends. So even though I'm sure this one will get a little bit of an expansion come around Oscar time, because I'm certainly expecting it to get nominated for a few things, but and we'll see if maybe it gets a good bump after it's gotten nominated, because of course La La Land, which was a big deal before getting nominated for its Oscars, but once it got nominated it exploded even more, which is Chazelle's highest grossing film. I mean, he only has really now 3 films that have gone into any kind of wide release, so it's not a huge competition, but that's kind of the point. I mean, and Chazelle's a big name as far as like a really strong artistic director, but he's not a big box office name. So we'll see how that continues to go going forward. It'll be interesting. I think it'll hold. It might hold decently well because of the good response it's gotten, but not as good a start as maybe we were looking for. But apparently Universal is perfectly okay with it. It does have a 61% audience rating. So again, maybe some people who had heard about this didn't know what they were getting into, as far as the slower pacing and such, and so it did also get a B+ cinema score, which is not bad, but you do see, as we talked about last week when we were talking about Venom, Suicide Squad got a B+. So it's not a. I wouldn't say that's a kind of a bad example, because I think now people generally accept Suicide Squad to be far worse than that B+ cinema score, but still, like, a B+ cinema score isn't anything amazing. So definitely a big difference between the critical response and the audience response on First Man. And I think that just has a lot to say with the crowd that the type of movie First Man appeals to. Just maybe not the box office crowd, which is why I thought it was interesting that this opened up so wide so quickly. Moving on to number 4, Actually, before we do that, still got a little bit more on First Man. It is tracking along with Bridge of Spies kind of right now with that opening weekend. Bridge of Spies did get an A cinema score, so a little bit better response from the people coming out of the theater. But it opened to 15.3, so it actually opened a little bit less. But it went on to gross $72 million domestically, so that's maybe about where we'll see First Man, but maybe First Man might go a little bit more towards 76, 77. We'll see. Come back next week and we'll have an update. Goosebumps 2 comes in at number 4 with 15.8 million. Just missed out on taking that number 3 spot. Just 200,000 away. So close. That is, of course, far less than the first Goosebumps film and even House with a Clock in its Walls. Hard to tell how much like those ate into each other's market shares, but I'm sure it didn't. I think Goosebumps 2 probably more ate into House with a Clock in its Walls market share because it's new. But I don't think it helped that those films, which had a very similar tone, came out so close together. I mean, 15.8 isn't too bad. It had a production budget of $35 million, which is a lot less than the first Goosebumps had. But but I don't think it's going to do gangbusters, and well, we'll see what happens. I would be very surprised if we ever got a Goosebumps 3. And looking at the response that one got a B cinema score, which is nothing special really. Has a 6.3 on IMDb, 38% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 59% audience score. We compare that to the first one, which had the exact same 6.3 IMDb rating, but it did have a 62% audience rating and a 77% critic rating. So generally better reviews for the first one. No big surprise. So that one, I'm not expecting Goosebumps to have very long legs. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that. At number 5, we got a familiar face in week number 3, Smallfoot. Third week in the top 5, brought in $9 million this week in 3,600 theaters, bringing its total domestic gross up to $57 million. It's doing good, man. It's getting some nice positive reviews. Just a solid film, doing solid domestically. Not much else to say about that. But of course, we got one other big opener this week, which was Bad Times at the El Royale, which opened in 2,800 theaters. That one opened to $7.1 million. Came in at number 7 this weekend. And that's kind of where I think we were expecting. It was expected to do. It had slightly positive reviews, but maybe not enough to kind of really make it surprise anybody. And it definitely, from what I heard, I didn't get a chance to see this one. I did get a chance to see First Man. That's probably why I talked about it way too much. Bad Times at the El Royale is just a very strange film and a hard to market film, and so maybe just it's hard to kind of get out to a wide audience, but it still did about as well as was expected, so not a big disappointment there. That one has a $32 million budget, so it'll look to hopefully get around 65 million to kind of make that up. And of course, I didn't get the international numbers for that, but it's doing okay. That got a B- cinema score. So again, kind of a strange film that might be hard for some people to get into, and we'll keep track of how that holds as well going forward, although we might not talk about it a whole lot because it didn't open in the top 5, probably won't see the top 5 for a while. Before we leave this weekend, we got to take a look at the per theater average. Beautiful Boy opened up this weekend in 4 theaters for a total weekend gross of $218,888. If you divide that by 4, that's going to give you $54,722 per theater. And that led the week. Beautiful Boy, of course, is the new Timothée Chalamet film. And Timothy Chalamet, I don't know, I should know that. Also stars Steve Carell. Of course, Chalamet was the big name last year with big roles in Lady Bird, but then Call Me by Your Name was the one that really got his name out there, and so a lot of people looking forward to this one. It's got a 62 Metascore and a 7.3 on IMDb right now. It's based off a pair of best-selling memoirs from a father and son duo, and it chronicles the heartbreaking and inspiring experience of survival, relapse, and recovery in a family coping with addiction over many years. So I've seen it. It's getting slightly positive reviews, but maybe not like amazing reviews. Definitely one that is Oscar hopeful, but we shall see if it does indeed pop up around that time, which will be here before we know it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Ranted a little too much on First Man, running a little bit behind, but we do only have one film coming this weekend. That's Halloween in 2018. So stick around. We will talk about Michael Myers right after this quick break. Welcome back to Box Office Breakdown. I'm Garret, Neal here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection, and let's talk about Halloween, the movie. Not the first one, but the new one that's coming out. We got the first entry in the series since 2009, and it's looking to do pretty well, man. I'm kind of excited. I actually have not seen any of the Halloween films, but I just checked out the first one from the library today, and I'm planning on watching it tonight. Because I think according to this new film coming out, the first one is the only one that happened. And maybe if I like it, I'll at some point check out the other 7 or 8. The other 9 Halloween films. So that's kind of too much for me. I don't know if that'll be worth my time, but this weekend, Halloween is looking to open in 3,700 theaters or thereabouts, and is projected to open at $65 million, which would be quite good. That would put it at the second highest opening for an R-rated film or R-rated horror film. Of course, number 1 there is It, which in 2017 opened up to $123.4 million, and The Nun from this year is number 2 right now with $53.8 million. So it's got a cushion. Halloween does to slide into that number 2 spot. Number 1, probably a little bit out of reach, but it's looking comfortable to slide right into that number 2 spot. Just in case you're curious, number 3 on that list is Paranormal Activity 3 at $52.5 million. Number 4 is The Conjuring, which opened to $41.8 million. And number 5 is Paranormal Activity 2, which opened to $40.6 million. Meanwhile, if we look at the rest of the films in the Halloween franchise, I mean, this is instantly going to become the highest grossing film in the Halloween franchise. Which, obviously we haven't seen an entry in a while, so we got some inflation going on and that sort of stuff. But still, there's a lot of hype around this one, just because, the property has had some time to lay down, and people have kind of not forgotten, but just kind of pushed aside the many recent less than satisfactory entries and remembered all the good times with it. And it doesn't hurt that this film has been getting some pretty positive responses. We got an 8.0 on IMDb right now, and an 86% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes with 69 reviews in. So it's not a ton, but it has been getting a pretty positive response, which has gotten a lot of people really excited. And horror movies, like, once you get those horror fans going, man, it's hard to stop them. If we do adjust for inflation on films in the Halloween franchise, a $65 million opening would still be the highest opening of any Halloween franchise film, but just overall gross, it would be number 5. The Halloween 2007, which the Rob Zombie one, I believe, is, yes, it is. And that one's total gross, which adjusted for inflation is $78.5 million. And the number 5 right now is Halloween Resurrection, which came out in 2002, which its total gross was $48.4 million. So adjusted for inflation, it's going to be, just off this first weekend, the 2018 Halloween will probably be the 5th highest grossing film in the franchise, and unadjusted, it'll easily be number 1. Number 1 right now is that Rob Zombie 2007 Halloween, which overall unadjusted grossed $58.2 million. So again, solid cushion. Even if this underperforms a little bit, it should be automatically the highest grossing film in the franchise, which is kind of interesting. Just you see how like big this property has been in pop culture, but it's, I mean, I guess that's kind of what horror movies do. They don't necessarily go too gangbusters at the box office, but they always do well enough, and because they're cheap to make, so then they just keep showing up because they keep doing just well enough, and then next thing you know, they're just an inseparable part of pop culture. But it's, the buzz has been enough to get me interested. I'm not a huge horror guy, but as I said, I have sought out to see the first film, the 78 John Carpenter Halloween, just so that I know what's going down when I go see this Halloween this weekend, and we'll see how it goes. But uh-oh, he's coming. All right, I gotta get out of here, man. Michael Myers is gonna come into the studio any second. That'll be scary, but just wanna let you guys know, thank you for listening. All the this weekend's information came from Box Office Mojo. The long-range projections came from Box Office Pro. I have been Garret Neal. You've been listening to the Box Office Breakdown on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. Hope you guys have a great week. Enjoy some movies this weekend. All right, I gotta go.